Well, thank you, Tim, for being here. We appreciate it. Thank you, everyone else, for taking the time out of your day to be part of this. Let's maybe start here with just a little bit about kind of your background and how you got involved in education issues in Milwaukee.
In terms of my own background, I would say my interest in education, probably like, all of you in this room, we all have reasons for being here. My interest in education starts out like very personally. So just as a specific example, I have roots in such big cities as Sheboygan, Wisconsin, Bluffton, Indiana, and Rockford, Illinois. And when I was just before middle school, we moved from Bluffton, Indiana, which is a very small rural town in northeastern Indiana, to Rockford, Illinois. And I ended up, at the advice of a neighbor, taking a test to get into a citywide accelerated program that was on the other side of town. Wilson Middle School was the name of the school, public school in Rockford. And I ended up going there with the encouragement of my parents, because even though it was a long way away, long bus ride, unfamiliar neighborhood, and I'll just say there's a really diverse population of students, what my neighbor told me is it's the best education you can get in the city. And my parents said you should go wherever you can get the best education. And so I did, and through that experience, and I followed this program through middle school and high school, I learned a couple things. First of all, I don't think I'd be sitting here in the role I am today if I didn't prioritize getting a great education. I ended up getting an academic scholarship to go to college, and then with the help of some student loans, progressed to law school. But I think, the education was really instrumental in my success, so I'm grateful for my suggestion of the neighbor, but also the encouragement of my parents to maximize that opportunity. But the other thing I learned is that great schools can exist anywhere, and it's not a matter of the neighborhood or the zip code or the building. It's really a reflection of the educators and the culture and everything that goes on inside the school. And so fast forward, in my time at Northwestern Mutual, as you heard from Ray, and as you know probably, education has been one of the pillars of our foundation, one of our priorities, and I see it every day. We have, I would call it kind of the ultimate knowledge worker company. We're in the business of offering peace of mind and financial security and delivering on promises, so it's totally intangible. And when I think about the skills that people need, that we need in our workforce, we need kids to get a great education, and I want the kids in Milwaukee to get a great education. So I thought it was really important from that perspective. And then kind of as it happened, Ray Minista was coming off of the Milwaukee College Prep Board, and I had expressed some interest. And so I had a meeting with Rob Rao, who I saw out here today somewhere, and Ron Sadoff, who were instrumental in getting Milwaukee College Prep started over 25 years ago. And I was blown away by what I saw. I wanted to help. When I met them at the school, and they talked about the fact that your zip code isn't your destiny, and their mission is around knowledge plus character. And when I saw the environment that they created in the school and the results they were producing, I just wanted to roll up my sleeves and help. And so, as you mentioned in the intro, for the last 9 years or so, I've been privileged to be on their board and participate in the really good work they're doing here. And now, just recently, in my new role, I'm on the foundation board, so I have an opportunity to get involved in education more broadly in Milwaukee, which is really exciting to me.
Mm-hmm. What do you recall, if you back up a decade and getting involved in the MCP board, what do you recall about just kind of getting to know education issues and just what can be complex topics and understanding and figuring out where you could contribute as a member of the board?
Well, you're always looking for ways to help as a board, and one of the ways I help, obviously, is I'm sort of a conduit between Milwaukee College Prep and the great work that our foundation team does broadly in the city of Milwaukee. And it's been interesting to observe and see the challenges in education, particularly in urban education here in Milwaukee over the last decade, including through COVID. And so I think there have always been challenges with urban education, but you saw, especially through COVID, the dynamics of some of those change. And I'll just give you a specific example or two. So one of the things that we noticed following COVID is, I'll call it more sort of like behavioral challenges. And one of the things that hadn't occurred to me, and you learn a lot when you're on a board of a school like Milwaukee College Prep, is they had observed that kids who had not been in social or school environments, you get sort of out of practice of behaving in school. And educators who might have 3 or 4 or 5 years of experience on their resume, because of COVID, only had a year or two of actually engaging with students in the classroom. And so it was more challenging, and I think we've also seen challenges around bullying, certainly rise in challenges around mental health and behavioral health. And so we've tried to think about ways in which we could help, and I thank our foundation team, including Thomas Rosenthal down here today. For the last 4 years, we've provided grants to Milwaukee College Prep that have helped them tackle some of these issues. Mm-hmm. And so, as an example, they have mental health professionals now on all 4 of their campuses. Those mental health professionals are providing guidance to parents and students. They're also providing training and support for educators and teachers' assistants. We also have provided support for anti-bullying programs and have seen real effect there. And so one of the things that's rewarding, and I think this has informed sort of our education strategy and how we've tried to help, is you want to invest in places where you're seeing results and impact. And while there are certainly challenges in education, there are things that we're doing that are really making a difference. And so when you look at, for example, some of the programs around social and emotional learning and mental and behavioral health, anti-bullying, what we're seeing at Milwaukee College Prep is lower incidence of bullying, lower incidence of suspensions, higher incidence of attendance, which are all correlated with higher scores, which we're seeing from a test score perspective. So those are some examples of challenges. And then the other challenge that I guess I would mention more broadly is just the challenge around attracting great talent. And that certainly is something that I relate with as a business owner. We talk a lot about sort of the war for talent and having great people. And I think education is just like any other place where you're going to achieve great things and have great results when you attract great leaders, great administrators, great educators. And certainly it's a challenging environment to be attracting great teachers, growing and keeping great teachers in urban environments. But I think that just speaks to why the collective efforts that Ray talked about are so important. Mm-hmm.
What would be your message maybe to other business professionals thinking about putting their hand up and expressing an interest in some kind of board service, or for companies that are thinking, hey, we should get more involved, but we don't know where or what to do or what, find our way? What's your message to them?
Yeah, well, I guess I'd give you sort of a two-part answer here. And first of all, I'll just highlight as a general matter some of the work that we've done through our foundation. And I don't mean to suggest this is like the answer, but I think it illustrates that there are a lot of different ways that you can get involved and help. As Ray alluded to in his introductory comments, we have really a pipeline strategy, and it's a strategy that's about delivering on this idea that every student in Milwaukee deserves an opportunity for a great education. And our focus is on quality seats, choice, charter, and public schools, from early childhood education all the way through the work with All In and college and getting kids back to internships. And I can talk more about direct investments that we've made in some of our pipeline schools. But I think what our experience illustrates is there isn't like a bad way to be involved. And I think one of the things that can be sort of overwhelming, maybe you can think, education's too political, and as business leaders, we try not to take political sides. But I think there are lots of different ways that you can get involved that are sort of all in, if you will, meaning they're supportive in advancing what's great for kids. And those things can include direct investments. It can include things like internships. It can include things like that are as simple as tutoring. So one example that's been really fun, I think, for Milwaukee College Prep and also for our employees at Northwestern Mutual is we call it Math Mondays. We have a bunch of actuaries at Northwestern Mutual, believe it or not. We have some people who are really good at math. But we have students come to our campus every Monday for tutoring, and that's a way of accelerating their learning, improving their opportunities for success. But I have to tell you, our employees love the opportunity to give back. And then there's so many organizations in Milwaukee that are making a difference here. There are also lots of opportunities for board service, and we've encouraged our employees to get involved in ways large and small with a variety of organizations that are represented in this room. Mm-hmm.
Do you see any similarities? We hear the idea of like kind of run it like a business kind of thing. Do you see similarities or key differences between how a business runs and how a school runs? Not that a school has the top line revenue that Northwestern Mutual does, but
did you see our financial results?
I wrote the story on it. It was
very good. It was
a good year.
It was an excellent story.
Yeah. But I mean, is there any similarities between business and education?
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't want to pretend to be an expert on education. I'm not. I've been, I have my own experience being educated. I have my own experience raising kids, and what I've learned in my experience on the Milwaukee College Prep Board and in the foundation. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for the educators and administrators that are represented here. My mom was a public school teacher. These are really hard and really important jobs, and so I appreciate what you're doing, so I don't want to suggest I've got all the answers, but I do think there are some similarities, and maybe I'll touch on those more than the differences. I think, first of all, one similarity is you have to manage across different time horizons. And this is one of the things that I'm sort of staring right in the face now as like the new CEO at Northwestern Mutual, is we have immediate pressing business needs. Sales, service, underwriting, like things that are happening right now. But we also think about managing the business on a multi-generational time horizon. So as we think about that as a leadership team, we have to be focused on now and near and far. And I think for educators and administrators and people involved in this space, it's similar. You have to think about those time horizons. You're really responsible for all of those. You're not just solving today's problems. You are, like you're helping the students you have today. But we also have to be thinking longer term about how are we building an environment that's sustainable, that's delivering the results. The second thing that I think is similar is we all have the ability to take advantage of data in our decision making. And there is tons of data around where we've seen success and where we've seen challenges, and how you can look at data as things you want to emulate, how you can look at things that aren't working well for things that are learning opportunities or things to do differently. And I think increasingly as we get more sophisticated around our use of data, I think paying attention not just to effort and what are we investing, but what are we getting back in return, and are we really getting the return we want in terms of quality outcomes for kids? I think there's an opportunity to be really data focused. And then the other thing, and I'll empathize with all of you in the room that face this from an education perspective, is you have to manage lots of different stakeholders. And to me, that's one of the challenges of leadership, but it's also one of the great privileges and opportunities. So at Northwestern Mutual, our stakeholders, of course, include our policy owners. We're a mutual company. We're owned by our policy owners. Thank you to all of you, by the way, in the audience who are policy owners and owners of our company. We greatly appreciate it. But we also have employees and contractors and 23,000 advisors and team members out there. And when we're making decisions, we have to think about what our decisions mean for all of those stakeholders. And sometimes those interests are totally aligned, and sometimes they're in tension. And one of the things that I've observed in education, you've got lots of different stakeholders, right? Certainly you have the students, but you've got educators and administrators and parents and different organizations, whether you're talking about a public school and government, or whether you're talking about a charter or a choice school and some other sort of governing structure. And so as I mentioned, I think that's one of the challenges. But I've also seen the power in that, because when in our own business, when we bring together those stakeholders and really focus on places where you can find the win-win or the win-win-win or however many you've got, I think that's where the real power is, because those constituents can bring challenges, but they also bring really important and diverse perspectives on what's at issue and what's it going to take to be successful. And so to the extent I think that you can cross those bridges as a leader and think about how your decisions are affecting multiple stakeholders, I think those things are very similar between business and education.
I want to shift a little bit into more on the foundation.
Sure.
I think the number is like $67 million over 30 or so years, and Dan was trying to fact check me on if it was millions per year or not.
It wasn't per year. That's a cumulative investment.
Yeah. But I guess why education in Milwaukee as one of the issues or topics that the foundation deals with and works on? Why? And there's a whole world of things you could do as a foundation. Why Milwaukee education?
Well, first of all, I'm happy to touch on that. And as I do that, I want to give credit where credit is due. Ray Manista is a super modest guy, but Steve Radke's here also, who leads our foundation. They've been instrumental, I think, in helping our foundation not just spend dollars or invest dollars in the community, but do it in a more strategic way. And I would say in terms of the big why, like why is education a priority for the Northwestern Mutual Foundation, I would expect for all of you in this room is probably obvious. First of all, it's really important to our business that Milwaukee is a thriving and healthy community, and that we've got a pipeline of great talent. And so we think it's the right thing to do for our business, and we think it's the right thing to do as a corporate citizen here in Milwaukee. And it's been very rewarding for us to be able to help and give back in that way. And then when we talk about targeted investments, I think, being intentional and thinking about partners and focusing on what works and what's helping to deliver those quality seats has been really important. But I think the other dimension is we've had the opportunity to make investments over time sort of across the whole life cycle, from early childhood education all the way through college internships, and turning some of those internships back into employees like who are working at Northwestern Mutual. In fact, Ray and our Chief People Officer, Kelly Culler, just this morning, we're talking about our investments that we've made in All In, the number of interns we have, and how we can do a better job of making sure those interns come back to work at Northwestern Mutual. So I want to do it for the good of Milwaukee, but we also want to do this work for the good of Northwestern Mutual. And the last thing that I would just say on this point is, and it alludes back to the comment I made before just about talent. We're really proud of our employee value proposition at Northwestern Mutual. It's a great place to work, and we are constantly competing for talent. And I think more than ever now, we're competing for talent on a national basis and trying to get people to come here, not just to work for Northwestern Mutual, but to come here and live in Milwaukee and work for Northwestern Mutual. And at the very top of the list for people when they're making family decisions about where they're going to be is, what are the schools like? What are the neighborhoods like? So housing, certainly an issue, but I think even above that is quality education. And so when we think about the value proposition of getting people to come and work like a company like Northwestern Mutual or of any of your other companies who are here, anything we can do to boost education in Milwaukee is also going to be good for us. And so I think it's, hopefully good for our bottom line long term, and also good for the work that we want to advance just as corporate citizens.
That kind of long-term vision of why to do it, it's maybe hard to measure exactly how that shows up. How do you think about kind of I guess for lack of a better way of saying it, the return on investment of that investment that the Northwestern Mutual makes on a kind of an annual basis? How are you thinking about measuring that? Yeah,
one tangible way, that's a great question. One tangible way that we measure it is the increase in quality seats. And so we have essentially a scorecard and a pipeline of schools that we partner with, and we're making investments. I think since 2020, I think we've made $10 million or so of direct investments in these pipeline schools. And the goal, and that has included capital investments, it has included access to capital, so loans, so that these schools that are producing quality outcomes can create more capacity for the students in Milwaukee to have access to a great education. And as I mentioned, this cuts across MPS, choice, and charter, and I'm sure many of the schools are represented here: Golda Meir, Aug Prep, Howard Fuller Academy. And so we keep track of what we're investing, but ultimately the goal is we want more and more kids in Milwaukee to have access to a great education, and quality seats is one of the ways that we go about measuring it. We do also track which of these students, go on to college, which of them come in to join our workforce. And so there are other ways that we manage sort of what it means to us from a pipeline perspective, but quality seats is kind of our headline measure and goal.
Mm-hmm. Just flipping back to your Milwaukee College Prep board service, do you kind of think of any in terms of return on your own time with investing, I'm sure, hours?
I haven't thought about it in terms of like a return on my time. It's been really a privilege and an honor for me to be involved. I'm grateful that Ray stepped off the board, and I'm grateful that Rob Rao and Ron Sadoff would have me. Many of you are involved in similar kinds of service, and when you're in that position, mostly what you're trying to do is figure out how you can help. And so, and it's also been a great way for me, just as a business leader in Milwaukee, to better understand what's happening in Milwaukee in the 53206 zip code, and what are things that we can do to make a difference in the communities that we're serving. And so I haven't thought about it in terms of a personal ROI, if you will, but I feel like I'm getting more out of it than I've put into it, I think.
We got about a minute left. Just curious if you've got any kind of final thoughts we got like about 300 folks in the audience, business, schools, nonprofits. Any final thoughts or a call to action for folks as they kind of go through the rest of the day today?
Yeah, thank you. I would say two things. I would say, first of all, I want to thank all of you. Probably part of the reason you're in this room is a lot of you are involved. So thank you. But I think for all of us to think about what are other additional ways that we can help, and there are so many different ways, from direct investments to internships to board service, that I would encourage you to look for ways that you can think about expanding your footprint and engaging your workforce and how we can make a difference here. But the other thing I think is an opportunity for us that isn't about just increasing our investment, but it's about how can we partner more effectively. Ray noted the fact that we've done a lot more partnering in the last 5 years, and I feel like there's more of that for us to do in Milwaukee, because my sense is if we sort of accumulated our collective investment, we probably could drive a greater return if we were thinking about it in a more coordinated way. And there are lots of places where we're starting to do that, I think, as business and community leaders in Milwaukee. But I think to be open to partnerships and to feel like we don't have to go it alone, we're going to be able to have more impact together. So those would be sort of my two parting calls to action, if you will.
All right. Well, those are great thoughts to end on, and please welcome or join me in thanking Tim Gerend for being part of our event today.
Thanks, Arthur. Appreciate it. Yeah.